Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Tim here with the TMA Connection, a podcast that focuses on people that are making a difference in the lives of others. And I got an awesome one here today.
Thank you.
Yeah. Megan is co-owner of Hartford Haven Studio. If you go back to episode, Drew, 57, 52, I don't know.
That's probably 55.
Kevin, her husband, was on our podcast. We got to get around to Hartford Haven Studio and check what they're doing out there. And so if you want to know more about that, that's the podcast to listen to. But today, we're talking about this new book that Megan wrote called The Think Big, Act Bold Way. Ladies and gentlemen, author, coach, business owner, mom, wife, Megan Ewing.
I was going to say, I think that sums it up.
That's about right. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I am excited to have you on this podcast. I read this book. It's awesome. As we talked about a little bit before we started rolling, it is a foundational blueprint to entrepreneurship. I got a lot of great ideas. I got some questions that I want to ask you as well. So this is pretty cool. I'm excited for this episode. So
this is my first time talking about the book.
Really?
Yes.
Let's go. Let's go. Really?
Yep.
I know it just came out just a couple months ago, right?
January 7th, so just about a month.
January 7th. And, I follow you on social media. Got to get into Hartford Haven Studio a couple times. You guys have had some events there for different things. So give everybody a little bit of a background about who you are, and maybe a little bit about the studio, just to kind of give everybody a shot of who you are.
So my name's Megan Ewing. I am the founder of Think Big, Act Bold. Think Big, Act Bold kind of started randomly. So it started with my first book, and then I realized that book was more on mindset, because I feel like to start anything, whether business, job, it starts with mindset first. Yeah. And what I realized was when I wrote that book, I didn't see the power behind Think Big, Act Bold. So it kind of went from a book to a movement. So that launched the second book, and it's also sparked my coaching programs and the Share the Vision initiative. So I'm very big on vision boards, and now I'm able to go into schools and do vision boards, or like Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCAs, and do free vision boards for youth.
Yeah.
So that's like a big initiative that started. So I like talking about Think Big, Act Bold, because I get lost with other things and talk about that more. But Think Big, Act Bold is really my heart. It's the ideas that come to my head that I can implement without partnerships or different things. It's kind of like all of my heart is behind it. Hartford Haven Studio, of course, you've been there. It's basically the home for creatives. So we wanted to create a space where people can do the things that they're dreaming about that half of the world is telling them not to. So, I want to start a podcast. Well, I don't have the right equipment. I don't have this. Or I don't have the money to put out for the equipment because it's not cheap to start. Mm-hmm. Or photographers looking for a place to shoot, but not being able to get a lease and have a studio, or people running workshops. So Hartford Haven is kind of that home for anyone who just needs a place to get started. And we've only been open a year. We've had people start with us and actually move on to have their own spaces.
That's cool.
So it's really fun to watch where when people have asked, oh, well, don't you get upset when someone opens their space and it's like yours? I'm like, no, we were the temporary home.
Yeah,
and right. The goal was to move on. Like, you shouldn't be stuck with us forever. I mean, we'd love for you to be stuck with us forever, but the goal was to move you forward in your life and in your business.
Yeah, there's a lot of great things that you're doing over there for different levels of people, whether it's somebody that's starting out, somebody with experience, and everything in between.
Right.
It's a really cool place. Definitely got to check it out. It's right behind the Athletic Club in Bel Air. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So,
thanks.
And like I said, if you want to check out an episode that features that, check out the podcast we did with Kevin Ewing, either on YouTube, Apple, or Spotify. So anyway, one of the biggest connections that I found in the book was your track to entrepreneurship, from taking leaps of faith a couple times in your past to get to where you are now.
Yeah.
Very much like you. I had to take a leap of faith and leave a teaching career for 16 and a half years. Your leap started with working in a government job, 40 hours a week, health insurance, various, an established, safe job, right? Take it from there. Give everybody just a little bit of an idea of how you got from a government job to running your own business.
So I say I never took a leap of faith. I was pushed. And because if it wasn't for what happened, I'll share what happened too, but if it wasn't for what happened, I would still be sitting behind the same desk on the 4th floor, processing the same cases. I very much loved the work that I was doing. I didn't enjoy the stuff going around me there, but I stayed committed. I was raised in, I think for like a lot of people, a traditional house where it was, hey, you go to school, you go to high school, finish, do great, go to college, and then you get a good job. And a good job meant get a job with the federal government because you get holidays. So I did that. So I was, my mom was ecstatic. You did it all. You're perfect. And then when it came down to what happened with the job was I had asked for a raise. I was the most educated in my department as far as degree wise. I was the youngest, but I was winning awards from judges and different things to show that my work was speaking for itself. My position wasn't a job that you needed to win awards. It was kind of like, hey, you sit there and do your job and stay under the radar. So they weren't able to give me a raise. So I said, hey, like, I love it here, but I should not be making this. So I found a different job, and before I put my 2 weeks in, I went to my manager, who we had a great relationship, and I said, hey, here's what I plan to do. I want you, before I put it and make it official, like, I want to know that there's nothing here for me. And I want to tell my division before I put it in formally. She's like, I fought. I want you here, but I can't argue with you because I can't match what this other job is willing to give you from the start. I said, okay. So I told my division, went on and put in my formal notice for them to come back 2 days later and say, hey, we can match, but because it's the federal GS system, it was going to be along like a 9-month span. It was going to take for them to get me the match. And I said, completely fine. Like, if it's on paper that I'm getting it, cool, because I'd rather be here. Well, that put a target on my back. So I'd already told my whole division, and they all knew I was leaving for money. So if I'm staying, they know I'm staying for money. So I ended up getting fired for stealing less than 30 minutes of time over a month period. They were watching me on cameras. They were watching me as I walked through security. They were watching me on the elevators. So I basically had a stalker watching my every move at my job. And the stealing, which I will take full responsibility, I did what they said I did.
Okay.
And, if that's the rules, that's the rules. But I did what I was taught. So we had to walk through security just like the prisoners that come in, just like the attorneys that come in. It was at a federal courthouse. And if you were in the security line and it was a busy court day, you text someone, hey, I'm downstairs, clock me in.
Gotcha.
So it wasn't evil, but I could have taken an earlier commuter bus, got 45 minutes early, but I didn't want to do that. So it was a lot of people doing it. No one really saw the errors in it. It was kind of like that unwritten rule that it's okay, but just, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I get it.
So
it
sucked, but in that moment, I was escorted out by 2 U.S. Marshals. So what they did know about me is I did the commuter bus. So they decided to wait till 11:30 in the afternoon, knowing the next commuter bus came at 4, knowing I lived in Harford County, gave me 10 minutes to pack up my office. Well, I can't pack up office if I have to walk home. And so I left with basically nothing, and I had a U.S. Marshal on each shoulder. And I mean, I'm tiny, like I'm
you're not
5'1".
You're not the most threatening person.
And it was hard for them because these are the security guards that I'm saying good morning to, so they're not understanding, and they're like, you're like, you're not going to hurt anyone. Like, and I just walked and walked down till I got to Orleans Street, and then I had called Kevin. I'm like, I just need you to pick me up. He said, "What is?" I was like, I can't speak. Like, I'm walking down Orleans, so the sooner the better, because Orleans Street isn't the place where I should have been walking. But I knew it would take me to Harford County, so I said, "Hey." And after, it was just a lot to mentally get over, but that's what really started my interest in entrepreneurship, because as low as I felt that day, and as long as it took me to get out of that depression, I was like, I cannot have someone else control my life, my well-being at all, because at that point it was like, you're treating me like I'm less than human.
Yeah.
And then being in a courthouse anyway, I'm like, you guys deal with like the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
So treating me less than human, I was like, I never want to have that feeling again. And somewhere in my brain, I associated a job with that feeling.
Okay.
And that's what's kept me going. That was 2014.
That was only 2014. Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay.
That was my last job.
So God closes one door, opens another one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So this pushed you into a new direction, taking self-control of what you're going to do. You're going to be your own boss. And so now, where does this lead you?
It led me to a company called Paint Night.
Okay.
So Paint Night it was huge. And they did events, taught you how to paint a specific painting in restaurants. And it was basically like a free-for-all. It ended up being predominantly women. You sat there and you drank, you had a good time with your friends, you took this picture home that might be pretty, might be horrible, but you had a great time.
Yeah.
And I was doing that part-time when I ended up getting fired, so I just decided to go to that full-time.
Okay.
And I ran the Baltimore, Maryland area, so that kept me from Cecil County to Baltimore City. And we were doing probably about like 15 events a week, but they allowed... Yeah. 15
events in a week that's 7 days long. Wow.
So I had to hire, which I had never hired before. I'm coming from an employee mindset.
Yeah.
So it made me grow quick because the business was growing so fast, and the corporate entity of it didn't put guidelines or ceilings, which really led to its downfall, because there was like a lot of different licensees coming in, and just they would put a location right next to your location on the same night and fight. And it was sad, because then it really kind of like killed the business. But I did that, and that actually brought me, 2 years after I left the federal government, brought me my first 6-figure year off of this. And I don't paint.
Paint Night.
And I was like, oh, I really know how to do something.
Yeah.
Like I might have made the right choice.
Okay.
And so I had Baltimore, and then I opened Savannah, Georgia. So I was in back and forth to Savannah running.
Jeez.
So I had a team there, and then COVID hit.
Wah,
so with the restaurants, but it was already slowing down because of the oversaturation. So I was kind of prepared.
Okay.
So it didn't hurt as much as it hurt other people. I actually sold my whole Savannah division to my lead artist. So I was able to give her a business. And when I say sell, she paid for the supplies that she had.
Okay.
So it wasn't me making profit off of it. It was, hey, if you can run your own events and you can buy the supplies off me, have fun and make more money than you're doing now. She was already running most of the events anyway.
Sure.
So that felt great to be able to pass a business on to someone.
Okay.
And then Baltimore, I just left completely.
Okay. Wow. And so that was chapter 2, well, probably chapter 13. And then your husband has a similar entrepreneurial mindset, right? And so now you've partnered with Kevin at this point.
Yep.
To help him.
So I decided after Paint Night to not go into something new and just build his photography business. He's very creative. He's very detail oriented with the camera.
Okay.
I'm that in the back end of businesses.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, hey, we'll build this. And it started growing and growing and growing. And I was like, oh, this works. Okay, so you're good. Like I can automate some of your stuff to move on, and that way I can focus on two different things at once. And once I saw how big the photography, because no one told me how big paint night could be. I had to just test it out. And
Over
find out.
$100,000 a year. That's a pretty lucrative little business. But then COVID hits and it's like everybody's closed down. Then what?
Yeah. And then luckily we had photography because,
Yeah.
Even though stuff was shut down and we did lose, COVID was tough for us. Wedding venues were shutting down. So I can't say it was great.
Yeah, sure.
But for us as a photography company to survive COVID, it gives you that much more belief of where it's like, hey, a lot of people didn't make it through this. And for us, we're cut back on a lot of our business. We have 3 kids.
Yeah.
So we weren't balancing, hoping they're going to a daycare and staying safe. Like, we were all home.
Right.
So having that was like the biggest blessing where like money sucked during COVID. Like, we won't beat around the bush with it, but like it just sucked.
Yeah.
But it was like, well, wait, after we got past it all, it was like, we didn't lose our house. We didn't lose our cars. And our kids got 2 extra years of us, like, and they might have hated it from it, but it made us all way closer.
Yes.
So it was definitely a blessing in disguise.
So now you've taken the skills that you're learning on building the back end of a business, and now is it a brand? Is it a mindset? Is it a following the think big, act bold way? Like how did you grow to this point?
So I would say it's more of a brand.
Okay.
The think big, act bold way for me was last year. What I realized after kind of like end of year was I spent all this time and I realized I was like the free text message coach. I helped a lot of people make a lot of money, but never worried about me in the factor.
Okay.
So the end of 2024 was like a big kick in the face of, wait a second, you help this person make money, you help this person make money, you help this person grow, you help this person grow. And I'm so quick to answer and give responses that I don't realize what I'm doing until I realize at the end of the day I did nothing for myself.
Yeah.
So that's what it was. Probably like the end of 2023 I decided, instead of doing that, I'm going to write a book, and my book will be what I go through with my coaching clients.
Okay.
Because that way, if someone texts me and needs help, hey, here's the link, buy the book. If you're not ready to do my coaching service, like that way I could give them, I'm bad at saying no. So this was my way of not having to say no anymore.
Yeah.
Like, hey, if you need help and you're not ready for coaching, here, it's $20, $25. Go on Amazon, grab it, and then you'll get the answers you need from me.
Sure.
I just can't be the one that's text messaging you all my free
all
coaching
your
while
stuff.
I like sit back.
but there is the mentality too in entrepreneurship that you do give value for free as a way of opening the door, but at some point you monetize that based on the value that you're bringing. And I think that's probably what you've done now is like you are now at that stage where you are monetizing because there is a lot of value in what you bring to people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've always been bad at setting boundaries. So I had to recognize that about myself to know like, hey, you're not going to set the boundary. You're going to help people until they can't, or I'd be scared to say no, someone I was helping, like, hey, I can't, because then I'm like, you feel like a guilty parent, like you give, and then when you say no, it's like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said no, but you have to say no for yourself.
Yeah. Or have the ability to make the ask,
yes.
which is there's a lot of fear behind that, right? Yeah. I mean, even going into like a listing appointment or whatever, it's like at the end, like, where are we going with this? Are we going to work together?
Yeah.
And that's so nerve wracking. How do you propose to people to get over that uncomfortableness of asking?
Really going down. So for me, I kind of like do a deep dive, as I think it's so easy to go into a job and the job will tell you, hey, you're worth $30,000. That's what we're paying you. And you either accept or decline. So kind of like teaching myself that, where it was, hey, you set the price. And if you can't set the price, then you have to do the deep dive and, okay, well, how many hours is this going to take? And it might involve, okay, well, I have to build a website landing page for my coaching. Well, keep that in mind. Or I have to pay someone, where sometimes I feel like I would discredit myself because I'm like, well, I'm giving you an hour of coaching. Well, I'm giving you 10 years of experience that I didn't get paid for.
Correct.
So I'm really, really bad about setting prices. My prices, I hired a coach over the summer and got scolded for my pricing. And I was like,
because you were charging not enough.
yeah.
Wow.
And so once I had that conversation, usually like pricing stuff, I'll shoot him a quick text and say, hey, and it's always too low. The other thing that I've done was I use ChatGPT a lot. So if I am considering a different service or addition to things, I'll ask them, ChatGPT, what the price should be. They are always very, very high.
Oh, okay.
So I usually never match their price,
Yeah.
but it at least tells me like, oh, you were thinking way too low. And that really helps me with like pricing, because I wish I could just do everything for free, because it takes a whole lot of stress off, but I'm not there yet.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. Let's get into the nuts and bolts. Okay, so you're gonna give me some free advice.
Yeah.
We just talked about you charging a fee, and this is gonna be free, right? No.
Yep.
So Kevin, when we sat down with Kevin, he did say that one of your greatest strengths is automation, systems, processes, stuff like that. And of course there are chapters dedicated in this book to different areas, like automation and time management and everything. So let's get practical, nuts and bolts. What are some of the things that you've done in your business to create automation to make the business, the processes, systems, to make that easier, more efficient in your business?
So automation to me has turned into like a game, like a video game that you can't beat. So kind of like the Aladdin and Simba or Aladdin and Lion King on, I think it was like Genesis, where it was like, there's no way you're getting past it all.
You are speaking very old video game language right now.
I figured you could relate. I was like,
I got you.
I can throw it out.
I got
here.
you. Yeah.
So
Drew doesn't know what that is.
It's probably better.
Yeah. PS2? Okay, maybe.
But whatever can happen without me or my client. So I do a lot of automation. I build out automations for clients. Whatever I can do to make them not be interrupted, I'm automating it as thorough as possible. So I work closely with a company called 17 Hats. It's a CRM company. And basically, so for Kevin, he was my first automation client. On his website, if you go to a link, he's not seeing any of this. He's not doing any of this. So they'll fill out their form. It'll be name, email, a few questions about the services that they're interested in. It automatically puts them into our CRM system. So now we have their info locked in. And then based on their choice of what service, it prompts a workflow. So then it'll send an email. And if they need to set up a consultation, it'll send an email. Hey, please click this link to set up a consultation. The consultation's based off of his availability calendar. So this whole time, from the time he got a lead into the consultation, he hasn't emailed, interacted, text, talked, anything. And then I just set up workflows like, okay, the consultation happened, and then what's the next steps?
Yeah.
So I think it's like the cheat code to getting ahead, to where especially if you're like me, where it's like, it's hard to hire people. It's hard, like, I really need to build a relationship with someone before I hire them, because I don't want it to just be like I tell you what to do and hope you do it.
Right.
So that was automation was my solution. So it was like, I have a fear of hiring people. How can I not hire people but not keep putting the work on top of me?
Yeah. Does the 17 Hats program, do they work well with certain CRMs, with all like, how do you link the tools to work together?
So it is its own CRM. So I can do all contracts, invoices, bookkeeping, everything through the one system. So for me,
so 17 Hats is the CRM. Okay.
Right.
Gotcha.
So and we've done, like, I've had coaching clients, I've had merchandise clients, I've had photographers. So it's worked in multiple industries. I can't say, I'd have to see other industries to see like their actual workflows.
Sure.
But I've never been at a point where an industry I was like, no, this isn't for you.
What industries have you worked with as far as your clients?
So I was working with, so of course, photographers is probably my biggest.
Okay.
Coaches, and then with the merchandise side of automation, I've actually had a partnership with Lennox Lewis and his nonprofit. So automating, what they were looking for was to sell merchandise to support the nonprofit.
Uh-huh.
But since they're in like 5 different countries, they couldn't find a fix for all 5.
Interesting.
So that was my job, was to find the fix, and that way we could have shipping going out to any of the countries that support him, and then it all goes back to the nonprofit without them having to touch anything.
Yeah. I mean, it's, certainly, in real estate, I'm always looking to improve the back end of our team and things. And so, we have a certain CRM management system called Lofty, and just trying, when people come in and they register through the website, is finding that balance of not being like overly pushy. And you talked a little bit about that in the book too, not in regards to automation, but just in relationship with other people, because you do want to have a service mindset when you're talking sales. You don't want to become the pushy person that just has that liner, the way to close. It's like I genuinely want to put together automation that provides value, and that's it. Yeah. So that's something that we're working on in the background. But I definitely connect it well with that chapter, because there is only so much time in a day.
Yeah.
And if you can automate some of the low hanging fruit of things that take time, but allow you to free up your time to do the more important things.
Yeah, and it's usually the things that you enjoy.
Yeah.
So most people aren't a nerd like me and enjoy doing back-end business stuff. But if it frees you up to do like your real estate, where you're actually like getting that, just kind of like that satisfaction during your day, because sitting behind a desk and planning out workflows and automated emails, like, it's just not fun work. I like that. That's what it gives me, where I'm like, oh, I've automated this, and I should track hours. But, since this is automated, so I did a productivity, currently have a productivity free challenge.
Okay.
So the free challenge, you can go on my site, it'll have it, and it's 5 days. It walks you through everything. The whole process is 100% automated. So if someone signs up today, I'm not doing anything. Mm-hmm. They will get their lesson each day. It'll introduce you to things. I did training videos. So it allows...
Gosh, how long does that take to set up? That
must
be hours, hundreds of hours. I don't know. It sounds so overwhelming.
For me, and I was like, I really should meet with someone to find out how fast I'm working. So I built that it was about 6 hours. And I used a training video that I had already trained a photography group. They have about 2,500 members. And I did a training for them. So for 2 of the days, I used clips from that.
Yeah.
And put those in, edited, chopped them up, put those in. And then the other 2 days, I had more worksheet. So after that day, like, Kevin had said something to me, and he was like, I don't think that's a 1-day project. And I was like, well, I don't know how long it takes. Like, he's like, no, you like lock in, and it's really, he was like, it's like scary, but like in a good way.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know how long it would take for like what the standard is.
Yeah.
And then usually I'll just kind of talk myself out of that, where it's like, well, do you really want to be the standard, or be at your own pace?
That's awesome. In your journey to entrepreneurship, there's certainly been, you talk about it in your book, getting out of your comfort zone, and then this whole thing of resilience, because it's a hard journey. This is not easy at all. It weighs on my emotions. It weighs on the pressures, the ups and downs of the market. Sometimes things are when things are going, they're pumping, right?
Yeah.
And then there are other times when things could just kind of fizzle out. How have you dealt with the discomfort and having the resilience to constantly keep pushing forward? I want to hear. I definitely want to hear your take on this because it's something that I struggle with constantly.
So a few things. I read a lot. Like every morning, I read a lot. I also incorporate challenges into everything. So I go to the gym at 5 a.m. every morning. There's no reason for me to wake up that early. There's no need for my schedule. I don't have to be up that early. So what I realized was I incorporate these challenges, not even really thinking about it, to make myself work harder. So every morning I do this, the first 20 minutes of my workout at the gym is the same. I go to the treadmill and I put it on an incline. Okay. And the incline's between 18 and 22%. And the reason I did that is I climb a mountain every morning. It's mentally, if at 5 a.m. I can climb a mountain for 20 minutes, there's nothing else that I can't do with my day.
Yeah.
And getting through that workout, and I feel like everything's a mindset trick of knowing, hey, if I did that, I can do anything. But just like when I come home and my to-do list is basically my Bible every day of Sunday night, I go and I'd make a to-do list for the week. All my appointments are in there, anything that I want to get done. And then if it's super priority, I'll put a star by it so I get it done on Monday. But having that, I never have to question, what am I supposed to be doing now? Because there's a list for me.
Yeah.
But the resilience, I think it's really, there's so many things I want to do for other people, and things have stopped me. So with the vision boards, I was doing vision board events just by myself. And then I realized, I was like, oh, well, instead of me paying for all the supplies, and this was our 7th year, I start charging. So then we started charging. I was like, oh, people are paying. Well, then I'm seeing other events going up, and they're charging double or triple what I'm charging. And I'm like, okay. Then it spread into going into the schools.
Yeah.
And so far we've serviced about 200 youth in Harford County, completely free. I went to Edgewood High, took over their classes. Yeah. And I was shocked about how good it made them feel, because I'm petrified. I'm like 5 foot. It's all juniors and seniors. They're all taller than me.
Oh yeah.
And then it was mostly boys. So I'm like, they're going to look at me and be like, what is this lady talking about? I am not cutting out things in a magazine. I'm not in kindergarten. And they loved it.
They love it.
So then I was like, oh, I want to do more of these. It's like, okay, pump your brakes, because before it was, oh, I'll just buy everything and figure it out later. So then it was like, well, let's build a business behind it to where it can be supported so I could service more people. So that's been my big thing of recognizing, hey, you can have these good philanthropic ideas, just take you out of the equation when it comes to supporting it. And then that's what makes me kind of work harder, because I'm like, okay, well, if I make this, that's enough to support. My goal is 1,000 kids this year. So I was like, if I can do that, I can kind of keep moving on. So that's been the resilience of getting
it feels like that's the driving force of genuinely feeling like you're serving others, and having the ability to be there motivates you in those times when maybe you don't feel like doing something,
right?
Or the times get tough, and it's like I'm looking at that bigger picture of making a difference.
And sometimes knowing when you need to take a break. So that is something I struggled with until this past December was probably, since I had left the federal government, probably the hardest month for me. And I didn't realize, my family's never talked about depression. We've never addressed it. We don't talk about feelings, for the most part. Now, me, my kids, and Kevin, we're kind of more open, I think, because neither of our families did. So December, I was spending a lot of time laying in bed. And, my kids would ask something, but Kevin, and I didn't really notice what I was going through, because I could get myself out and I could go through some work. But it was kind of this low point of, I realized, I think I just needed a few more breaks, because, the studio came on, I kind of took over, built out all the automation there, built the website. So it was like so much going on there, plus Kevin's business, plus like my business started to take off. And I never sat back to realize like, hey, like at your age, like you would be working one job. You're working 3 separate things. Like give yourself grace. So recognizing when you need the break is, I think, huge for resilience. And I think it like, some people will be like, well, taking a break isn't resilience. And I'm like, yeah, no, it really, really is.
Yeah.
Because it's harder than working. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, in the book, you talked about, you know, always being grind. To build in those breaks, whether that's just a hike in the woods or sitting down and reading a book or having mindfulness and meditation or traveling.
Yeah.
You know, is because, you know, it does seem like a lot of times where I'm constantly on the go, constantly, you know, busy to a point where I burn out.
Yeah.
You know, and so preventing that burnout is building into your schedule things that you can kind of just relax and chill and be okay with that. That's the problem that I have, is being okay with it.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, because you feel like you have to keep going. So I would start time blocking. So time blocking really helped me kind of get out of scheduling the breaks.
Yeah.
So I would work. And then it was like, okay, oh, the kids are fine, so they don't need me, so I should work. It was never, oh, they're fine, so I should relax. So putting in the time blocking, it was like, okay, from this time, I think it was like I realized like from 8 to 9, my daughter's getting ready for school. I was trying to work through that. And then I'm stressed out getting her ready, and then I'm stressed out because I'm not, and I was like, no, don't work that hour.
Yeah.
It's an hour.
Right.
And then giving myself a cutoff at night to where it's like, hey, unless there's an event or something, you know, that has a quick turnaround, I'm just cutting myself off. And sometimes like I've hid my computer, and I was like, I don't have boundaries.
Really?
So I would hide the computer, like I'd put it in the basement knowing I'm not going in the basement for it, and I would like make myself turn.
And that works for you. That's cool. That's cool. So when you talk about time blocking, does every day block out the same, or do you have different days where you have different blocks that you're, within your business? Like on Mondays we focus on this in these blocks, or is it every day I'm doing a little bit of the same thing every single day?
So I haven't perfected. So basically, it'll be the same blocks of time each day, but it may be a different task. Okay. So like Tuesdays, I have like recording scheduled. So it might be a full length podcast. It might just be creating clips. It might be So I try to keep it loose enough to where I have flexibility, but tight enough to where I know. So any of my consultation calls, they're only taking place on certain days, certain hours. So if you want one outside of that, of course, in special circumstances,
there's flexibility.
Yeah, but for the most part,
I couldn't do that.
I'm sending you that link.
When a buyer wants to see a house, it's just like, no, I'm sorry, we can only do that between 9 and 11 on a Wednesday.
Yeah,
and it's Thursday. It's like that property's gone.
And for me, I just had to, because I realized people are asking me for advice and doing things, but I might have just got thrown up on by my kid at the time that you want the advice.
Right.
So now that I've blocked it, so I do like co-working every Wednesday. That co-working time, I know I'm there to serve other people. It's a free co-working session. If I get work done during it, great. But if not, I'm okay with that. And setting those times where it's like, hey, you have questions? Show up to co-working. It's in person or virtual. Hop on, ask your question, get off. I don't care. But I can't answer it on a text while I'm handling something else. And then do not disturb on my phone is a big blessing.
When do you set that? Where are your blocks where you set the do not disturb?
8 p.m. After 8 p.m., I'm
You're
not
done.
checking my phone. Besides my parents, my aunts, and kids and Kevin, you just don't have access to me. And then in the morning, it'll come on at, it's at 6. So I usually work out from 5 to 7. And then at 6, if emails want to start coming in, it doesn't bother me.
Okay.
But I probably should do it more.
Interesting.
But that the nightly cutoff is just.
See, and yeah, that's a thing too. Like I, especially earlier in my real estate career, I pick up the phone 10 o'clock at night on a Sunday. If a lead came in or if a client needed something, I would genuinely be there at all hours. And but I found that once you start putting that time out there to say, hey, and letting them know the rules of engagement, like after 8 o'clock, like you said, I'm not available. People will respect that time, but you have to set up the boundaries.
Yeah, and they're more comfortable with it than you think. And it's scary.
And nothing that's happening at 10:30 at night is gonna get resolved that can't get resolved after 7, 8, 9 a.m. the next day. Nothing's happening in those hours. Everybody's sleeping.
Yeah,
nothing's gonna happen.
No, and I think a lot of it started with Kevin before I did his automation. It was we're taught as you're an entrepreneur, like you have to answer the leads quick. So that meant if a lead came on email, you have to be the first to respond.
Speed the lead.
Yes, because you don't know how many people they're reaching out to. So that's what prompted the automation. So now all of his leads, no matter what time they come through, they get an automatic response. And the response isn't, hey, thanks. It's formal, and it gives them a link to the website in case they have other questions. And that way, that gives me the time until the next morning that I have like scheduled email time in my day to go back and say, okay, they got their initial, here's a friendly, hey, thanks for reaching out. Please let me know directly if you have any questions.
Yeah.
But I had to do that because my brain kind of like you, where it's like, you don't ignore a lead. It doesn't matter what time. Like, you don't want to see somebody, a competitor, walking around with that lead and you're like, if I would have just answered the call at 11 p.m.
It's happened.
Yeah.
It happens. Gosh. The other thing that you were talking about with waking up at 5 a.m. every morning and getting to the gym first thing, like, and that uphill climb, even though you do it on a treadmill, I do it with weights, but it's like, if I don't do that in the morning, everything else, the whole day is just completely discombobulated. I have to take care of myself first.
And it's weird because that's how I, like, if I don't get up at 5 and get to the gym, my whole day is like, and I keep telling myself, maybe it's just a mindset thing. I was like, I don't think it is. And so I read Robin Sharma's The 5 a.m. Club, and he talks about how it's not just a mindset thing. It's actually, and I don't know the scientific stuff behind it, but it's actually that release of something in your body that allows that first thing in the morning to basically jumpstart your energy for the day.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Definitely connected that with that. But then I also connected, and I need to be better at this, with your mindfulness chapter. And you talk about the importance of just taking a few minutes to focus on breathing and all that. Talk to me a little bit about how mindfulness has made a difference in your journey.
It's that peace when I am going nonstop. So sometimes I'll realize like I'm going, and I'm not feeling like I've accomplished anything. And I kind of like see it as like gears spinning in my head. And that's usually like, now I can catch it to where I'm like, hey, close the computer and walk out of the room. Because for me, if I'm in the room that I was working, my brain can't turn off.
Yeah.
Usually it's as simple as like we have a deck in our backyard, and I'll just go sit out on the deck. And that touch of nature just changes something and changes the scenery. Or if I'm having trouble focusing at home, I'll go to the studio and work at the studio, a change of environment of just kind of like really paying attention. And part of the mindfulness came from the 5 a.m. Club, where it said, I'd had my morning routine worked out and everything was great, but it said in the evening, have like a touch of nature. It doesn't matter if it's a walk. It doesn't matter if it's a drive with the windows down. Like, have something.
Right.
So kind of incorporating that, I realized, I was like, oh, it gets you out of the bed, out of the couch, out of wherever your mind was.
Yeah.
And it just is freeing. So
well, there's got to be something with sunlight too, you know, all that. I've even heard people that say, you want your feet to touch the earth, like no shoes, like there's some kind of connection there.
And I've tried that, but I never got, now put me in the sand with no shoes. Like if I'm at the beach, I'm at the sunrise every morning.
Now we're talking.
But like the grass, I was like, I've kind of tried it and yeah, it feels cool. But I was like, I never got that deep connection from it. I get it from just sitting outside, and I'm like, okay, this feels good. Like it lifts that weight.
Yeah. Outside of exercising in the morning and reading, is there a daily habit that is a non-negotiable that you have to do every day, or that you try to do every day? Because we're not perfect.
I feel like it's my morning routine. So every morning it's the same: gym, come back, and I read, and then get one kid on the bus, and then from there shower, get ready for the day, and move on. But the morning routine is like that one.
That's the staple.
Yeah.
That's the foundation of everything.
That's a good question. I was trying to think of any other habits. That, and then like weekly, it would be my to-do list.
Yeah.
So if I go a week without a to-do list, you might as well chomp it
And
up.
well, you were
to
also
nothing.
talking in your financial chapter, you were talking about setting aside a specific time or day where you focus on your finances and your expenses and your income, stuff like that.
Yeah. So I'll like, we have a sheet, and I try to do it monthly, and I'll put it on the sheet of any like balances on like the mortgage, any cars, any credit card, and I'll just list it because for me, and I want to go digital, but I'm not a digital person. So it's all
What?
when it comes to note taking and things like that.
Yeah.
Everything like I don't think I brought any of my notebooks.
I have looked at those marble composition books. That's my like.
So mine's the
my
5
brain.
subject.
Okay.
So I do that, and I'll just, when I put it out on paper and look at it, I'm like, okay, so this is how we're going to break this down, and just kind of know. I think, and I'm no financial advisor, but I think when you have trouble financially, it's usually because you're running from seeing it.
Yeah.
But if you see it, then you're like, okay, whoa, this is too much, or whoa, I can handle. You get that better picture. So I definitely do that monthly, just for that kind of like reassurance. And I set big. So my goal is to have our home paid off by my 40th birthday. So
How old are you now?
38.
Let's go.
So we're a little behind, but not too behind that we can't do it.
Okay.
So it was like having those kind of big, crazy goals makes you have to pay attention. So I have to know what the mortgage balance is, because I'm not waiting for the 30 years to be up. I've set a bigger goal.
Right.
So those little things, kind of like the little daily challenges that keep me focused.
I like how you put that. I found myself in the past where there's been things that I maybe don't want to do, but when you put a challenge to them, or like public speaking, getting up in front of people. But if I can challenge myself to do that, back when I was in college, first day, that they're going to be going around the room, and then
and your head's down.
and your head's down. Please don't call on me. But if you try to take an opportunity to put yourself in a position where it's out of that comfort zone, like you were talking about, and just making that challenge, I think that's a really cool concept. Certainly made me think, when you were saying that, how I could incorporate more of that into my life.
And I try to think about things that I put off. So usually like the things that we put off are a lot easier than we tell ourselves. So I hate doing laundry. But then when you think about it, it's like you're literally throwing some clothes in the washing machine, switching it to the dryer, and folding it. Like that's the most basic, easy concept of life. You just told yourself it was hard.
Yeah.
And then when it's done, you realize it's easier. So I think like public speaking, I hate and now I like it more. But for me to know that I spoke in front of schools a lot, and then I spoke at Harvard Community College entrepreneurship. I don't know what the actual thing was, but I spoke on their stage. And once you realize, like, stop putting so much pressure on what you're going to say, and know it's just going to come from you.
Yeah.
Because like podcasting, I was like, someone asked, "Oh, were you nervous for your podcast interview?" I was like, "No, we're going to talk." And
it's just a conversation.
And it can be the same thing with public speaking.
Yeah.
Where, it's a little different because you don't get the feedback with people, but incorporating kind of that where it's like, hey, you have to speak for 15 minutes. Like, that's what you're hired for, 15 minutes. Like, what have you done? You've wasted 15 minutes doing less. And then once it's over, it's like, it feels good and it was worth it. So kind of, I try to eliminate the fears early by kind of dumbing stuff down. Where it's like,
that's interesting.
You're just talking.
I know there's a way of thinking of things. It's like eating the frog, like thinking about the biggest thing that you have to do and focus on that first. Do you have that mindset at all about it? I like the thought of dumbing things down, like the laundry. It's like, you're making it a lot bigger than what it really is.
Yeah.
Right. But do you ever prioritize things by taking the biggest thing first, or?
I don't know about the biggest thing. So like daily prioritizing, I look at anything that's going to take less than 5 minutes. It can't go on the list. I have to get it done now.
Okay.
And that way I kind of move past those. I also, if I think something's going to be challenging, I know a lot of people will say, well, don't share your next moves. Don't share this, blah, blah, blah. I share because if you share something with someone, now you're obligated to do it.
Yeah.
So when I brought up like,
you'll hold yourself accountable to somebody else.
Exactly.
Even more than just yourself.
Yep. So I'll share it with someone. If it's like something big that I'm like, oh, I'm going to do a masterclass, or I'm going to, like with the Share the Vision initiative, before I had it all figured out, I shared it.
Yeah.
And people started to donate. Well, you can't turn back now.
Right.
So that's like my trick. And a lot of people don't like, they're like, well, why would you share the things you're doing? Like, if people share steal my ideas, they still have to do it how I would do it. Mm-hmm. So I'm not the only person who runs vision board events. Yeah. You just have to make yours different. And you make it different by being you. So I've never had that fear of people stealing my idea. I watch my ideas stolen all the time on social media. And if you get caught up in it, which I did for a while, then you're just not being productive while it looks like they're running with your idea. Yeah. And actually making it work. So I just kind of, hey, if I'm scared of something, put it out there, or start one step towards that big goal to where you can't turn back.
I like it. Yeah. In your balance of you're married to an entrepreneur. He's doing his thing. You got your thing going on. You have the three kids, the laundry, the cooking, the cleaning. What would you recommend as one of the biggest things that you guys do to balance everything that's going on?
I don't know that there's a secret to it. For us, our kids always take priority over everything. So if it's a sports game, we don't miss a sports game. If it's something during the school day that parents can come in, we don't miss that. So giving them that priority. My biggest fear of entrepreneurship was, as fast as me and Kevin have to move on all that we have going on, I never wanted my kids to hate entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. I never wanted them to look at it as, like, when I was growing up, like, my parents would complain about, oh, the traffic, or oh, this. So it put this, and I think that's why there's a lot of entrepreneurs now, because we were told growing up, we kept hearing about how negative jobs were, about all the stress that comes with it. And I was so scared to do that to my kids. So it's like, I always kind of give them priority. And then
I literally put it on the calendar. Like anything that they have first, like that goes on the calendar first. Everything else has to revolve around that.
Exactly. Yeah. And then then that gives me balance. Mm-hmm. I think we could work. So since Kevin and I both basically work from home, and we get so much time together that now we realize, like, okay, we thought we had balance, but when we're together, we're working on the business. Mm-hmm. So now it's like going back and figuring out, okay, just because we're together, we're not together. So let's figure out the same way we're making the kids a priority, like at least weekly we have to make
relationship a priority.
Right. Yeah. And we're just too different. So I'm in bed at 10. I mean, knocked out of sleep.
Because you're waking up at 5 in the morning.
He's a night owl.
Oh, okay.
So it's like our schedules work perfectly working together, but it was like, we might have to figure out like the marriage part too. Yeah. And because it's just flown.
It's hard.
Yeah, and it's
my wife and I worked together for a while there, and it was hard, Yeah. And to dedicate some time for you to be husband and wife. Is very, very important. Yeah. Wow. What are you looking forward to in the coming year?
So my word for the year is selfish.
Ooh.
And it's a pain. I'm a like people pleaser. So being selfish is like completely out of my realm. So I'm excited to really push out like the Think Big Act Bold brand and some of the just different things that I have going on there. The Share the Vision initiative is probably my biggest, just because I know the feeling I get when I leave all of these schools. And then there's been an opportunity that the vision boards will be going to camps in Jamaica and Canada this year. So I think it was bigger than I ever gave it credit to.
Yeah.
And the vision boards is something that I don't have to prepare for. It comes easy for me.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times with entrepreneurship, we make it harder and make it feel like, oh, you have to do the hard stuff. So I built like a whole coaching program, and that was hard. And then it was like when the vision board stuff started to work, I was like, why didn't I think about this in the first place? So really betting on myself, setting the boundaries with whether it's clients, whether it's friends, family, of I can't be their free business resource at all times, but I can create things to help them. So the book, this actually came today, so that's why I brought it.
Ooh.
So I made a planner. So that is like the full, and that's your copy.
Oh, thank you.
So it's a 90-day planner to kind of, for the to-do list, to keep you kind of on track. So I'm trying to create resources.
This is awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Check that out there, YouTube. If you're listening on podcast platforms, you gotta get on YouTube and see that. Yeah.
But yeah, creating the resources that I was giving my time with. So I'm trying to protect my time more. So I'm excited to watch the book grow. It's currently in 7 countries.
Wow.
And
let's go international bestseller.
Yeah, I was like, what? How did that happen?
Yeah.
So really betting on myself, being selfish, setting my boundaries, and kind of watching things really kind of grow and take off for myself. Because it's fun to watch the studio take off. It's fun to watch Kevin's business take off. But those aren't my heart involved. It's just my skill involved. So now it's really time
this
to
is your thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's cool. Of all the chapters that you've outlined in your book, what's been the hardest for you throughout this whole process?
Probably imposter syndrome.
Okay.
So to me, I'm like, little old Megan, why does anybody care to know what I have going on? And I started to realize, like, you're doing a lot.
Yeah.
So, and your first client being your husband and like taking his business to where it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like I got paid for that. Like, I'm helping him grow his business. So I never.
You don't charge him? I'm just kidding.
He pays now.
But
But during the process, it was like just fun to build it.
Yeah.
And when things came easily, I put less value on it. So even like the book, when I launched my first book, I didn't put much value on it. Like, it did amazing the first week.
Yeah.
And then I never really talked about it again.
Interesting.
So this book, I was like, I'm going to talk about it more, promote it, because I'm creating these things because it's evergreen content. Whether you read this today or whether you read it 5 years from now, it's still going to have a huge impact on you. So I think that was like the big thing of getting over imposter syndrome and knowing you've been in the full-time entrepreneur game for over 10 years now. Like, you're not 1 year out. You're not, give yourself some credit, and really like talking to myself, saying, stop doubting it, because even, you can't help everyone. There's people above you, but there's also people who need you. And you're doing, when I spoke at a networking event, someone had told me, and they had been at the networking event often, he's like, can I like give you some tough love? And I'm like, you've like never spoken to me before. I don't know where this is going. And he's like pissed. And I'm like, yeah. And he said, you did a discredit to everyone in this room and everyone that you've met on this journey, because you've been in this room with us twice a month for a year, and we knew none of this. All you did was advertise the studio, because the studio is easy to talk about.
Yeah.
It's like, we never knew any of this about you.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. So I'll work on that. And that was the end of December. So that's why I was like, nope, we're going selfish. We're going to get through the imposter syndrome and know that the more I can share, the more value I bring,
Yep.
and the more ways that I can find to share the message.
I think, in this book, in speaking with you, the several times that we've spoken with each other, you're so relatable. You're so it's just real. There's no like smoke screen of like I'm killing it, but I'm really not. It's just it's genuine, it's authentic, and that's probably the most important thing that you need to have when you're branding yourself, when you're advertising yourself, you're marketing yourself, is authenticity and genuine, and having that ability to be connected with, and you have that very relatable. The book, like I said, it's like a foundational blueprint. I felt connected to it. A lot of times in this life of entrepreneurship, you feel like sometimes you're just alone.
Yeah.
And reading this book is like, well, she feels the same way. It's like through this, everything in the book, I just felt like I'm not the only one.
Thank you. And I think entrepreneurship is lonely, and I think it's because we're almost taught to brag about the good and hide the bad.
Yeah.
Because if you share the bad, then you're less successful.
Right. Either that, or it's like people think that you have it made, and it's like you're complaining now.
Yeah.
Like you're really going to complain about this, and it's I am grateful for a lot of the things that we've accomplished, but there's still a side of this. It runs on your emotions.
Oh yeah.
It runs on your mental health, like we were talking about earlier. So, I certainly felt that I wasn't the only one.
No, and I think that was the big purpose of the book, is showing, hey, I look pretty on social media. Things are going good, and they are going good. But that doesn't fix that December was very hard mentally and emotionally for me, and for other people it was too.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with sharing that, because I want people to know, hey, if you want to get into entrepreneurship, it's the most rewarding thing you'll ever do. But there's a lot of stuff you have to get through. And if you're willing to get there, great.
Yeah.
If you would rather not, and you're better as an employee, you shouldn't be embarrassed by that.
Not
because
at all.
a lot of people, it's easier for someone to just, hey, tell me what to do and I'll do it for 8 hours, and then I can turn my brain off.
Yeah.
And if that's you, I think it seemed like there was an attack on employee mindset versus entrepreneur mindset. And it's like,
it's not either.
No, it's just two different people.
Exactly. It's not one's right and one's wrong.
And there's stuff that sucks about both of them.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. The good has to outweigh the bad, though.
Yeah.
And it does. So where can people pick up this book?
So it is available on Amazon, paperback or hardback. And if you go and search my name, Megan Ewing, on Amazon,
Yep.
All of my books will come up. You'll be surprised how many books I released that I haven't talked about.
So there's more than two.
So there's 2 books, but I do so I have gratitude journals on there that I've made, and different kind of writing prompts, but there's 2 books.
Books.
Yep.
Okay. That's cool. I didn't even know that there was a first book. So now I got to go read the OG one. The
And that
original.
one's different. So that one's all on mindset. So it's the mindset shift, and then this is they complement each other to where this is
It all starts with mindset.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. And if people want to connect with you or the studio or anything, where can people connect with you?
So social media, it is Hartford Haven Studio, or hartfordhavenstudio@gmail.com. If you have questions, want to set up a tour, hartfordhavenstudio.com. You can do the same thing. And then my website is Think Big Act Bold. You can reach me there, thinkbigactbold.com. And then on social media, it's Think Big Act Bold.
Well, you have definitely thought big, and you are acting in very bold ways. I wish you nothing but great success. I love what you and Kevin are doing. I've loved the conversations that we've had. You're just 2 genuinely great people that are doing good things for other people, and that's you're so proud of what you've accomplished and what you're gonna crush in the future, because You guys are bringing it.
Thank you.
Yeah, very welcome. Very welcome. If you want to follow us, we are at the Markland Advantage on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And thanks to you guys, in part, we've actually gotten over 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, and that was
Congrats.
Part of everything that we're doing right now. In large part is bringing Drew on our team and doing what he's been doing with the content creation. But some of that, what started that was one of the events that we went to at the studio. Kind of sparked everything that we've been doing, and we're just trying to stay as consistent as possible. And so,
that's awesome.
Thank you. You've been a part of the journey.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So please follow Megan. Please follow us. And thank you so much for coming in today. This has been awesome.
Thank you.
Get the book. And until next time, live your life to the fullest. And we'll see you soon. Take care.
So did you like this episode of the TMA Connection? Well, you might want to check this one out right here. Go ahead. Click it. Go ahead.